This is Midrash Tanchuma, Parshat Ki Teitzei, entitled Sending Away the Mother Bird. Why such great rewards for an act of cruelty? The Midrash starts out with the famous principle, mitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera. Now, the word goreret literally means to drag, which means that if you do one mitzvah, it brings along another one. It leads to another mitzvah. And if you do a misdeed, it's going to bring along more misdeeds. So the Midrash, quite not unexpectedly, looks in the Parsha and says, what's a negative example? Of course, the way the Parsha opens with the Yefei Toar, that if you're in the heat of the battle and you see a beautiful woman, you take her home, that's going to lead to all kinds of things. Of course, there's all kinds of interesting psychological laws that come to play, that she has to cut her hair and she has to let her cry, and all kinds of ways to let the heat of the battle kind of cool down, and now you see that this wasn't really such a good idea. But if you keep going and you marry her, then the next parsha talks about, if you have a one wife you love and one wife you hate, and what's going to happen to your home. It's going to break apart, and then of course you get the ben sora morer, you get the child who has to be put to death because he's doing such destructive behavior. So that's a simple, straightforward example Rashi brings about how one misdeed brings on the next. What's surprising is that when it comes to proving the other half, that one good deed brings on more good deeds, one mitzvah goreret mitzvah, it takes the example of shiluach hakan, right? Sending away the mother bird and taking the eggs for yourself. And what does that lead to? Means when the parsha goes on to talk about building a new home and successful harvest and clothes and things about marriage and children, all these things are a big blessing for this one law, which is very hard to understand. I mean, you're shooing away the mother bird. Aren't you causing harm to this mother bird? Isn't that kind of cruel? And yet you get all these rewards. That's what the Midrash enters into, is actually gets into a Zohar, which I'll have to take a shot at trying to explain this very mysterious law. So by way of explaining it, the Midrash tells us about a very cruel bird called a kore bird. And this bird used to go and sit on eggs that were not its own and help hatch the eggs, and then it would clip the wings of the baby birds so that as they grew old enough to fly, they couldn't fly and they'd be subject to other birds coming and destroying them. So very, very cruel bird. And this is a metaphor, the Midrash says, for other nations coming to the land of Israel, a land that was not theirs, exiling the people and destroying the Beit HaMikdash. This is the kore bird. And from here, we're going to then go to a Zohar, which is going to put it all together. One of the commentaries to the Midrash Be'er Hamarim says that every bird has a guardian angel, just like, by the way, every blade of grass has a guardian angel. And these guardian angels came and complained to God. And their complaint was very much like the title of this piece of Torah. Why is it that there's a mitzvah that encouraged shooing away the mother bird and taking the eggs? That's an act of cruelty. Why is the Torah promoting cruelty? And God's answer to these guardian angels was, how come you're complaining about this, but I never heard you complain about my people who were plundered from their nest, living in Eretz Yisrael, living in Shalayim, and it was burned down and they were scattered around the world. That kind of scattering of the birds you never complain about, but you're only complaining about this. I don't pretend to understand exactly what this means, but somehow it comes back to the fact that shiluach hakan in some way arouses God's compassion and brings, so to speak, a focus of God back to the fact that we have been exiled from our nest, and God very much wants us to return to our nest. And this, in some way, it's a mystical way, reminds God and petitions God to bring the Gula, bring us back to our nest. Have a great Shabbat.